Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. When a global brand like the NBA walks a political tightrope in the most sensitive markets, how much of their strategy is, actual political recovery and how much is just pure commercial playbook?
Well, today we're really digging into the upcoming return of the National Basketball Association to the Chinese market, specifically these preseason games set for Macau, October 2025, Brooklyn Nets, Phoenix Suns.
Right.
And this event, it's being framed in a lot of headlines as this sudden comeback, right? The end of a, quote, 6-year exile. But honestly, if you strip away the political noise, what you see is something much more deliberate. It's like a carefully planned commercial and, geopolitical dance.
That dance, that's the real tension we need to unpack for you. Because on one side, you've got this high-stakes political drama grabs all the attention. But on the other, there's this colder, systematic commercial reactivation plan, quietly happening behind the scenes. So we're going to look at the real cost of that original conflict, how this return was actually phased in long before these Macau games were even announced, and what does real growth look like? Is it just about finding the next Yao Ming?
Yeah, it's a classic case, isn't it? You watch the big performance on stage, but you completely miss the complex financial and structural plumbing they had to rebuild underneath it all.
Plumbing. Okay, so you're saying the whole story, the idea that the league just sat on its hands for 6 years waiting for things to blow over, that's just not accurate. Walk us through that hidden infrastructure they rebuilt.
Okay, yeah. To really get the return, you have to start with the cost of the exit. Remember, this whole thing blew up back in 2019. Daryl Morey, he was the Houston Rockets manager then.
The Hong Kong tweet.
Exactly. Posted remarks related to the Hong Kong protests. And the reaction from China, it was immediate, it was systemic, and it was brutally expensive for the NBA.
How expensive are we talking here? Like ballpark?
Well, it hit on multiple fronts. Chinese state TV, CCTV mostly, just stopped airing games completely. Poof. Then the corporate sponsors, both Chinese firms and American companies in China, they pulled their money. Severed ties almost overnight.
Wow.
The league itself admitted to losses, stretching into the hundreds of millions of dollars. It was a massive, costly lesson in just how fast politics can basically vaporize a huge commercial operation in a, sensitive market like China. That incident really set a precedent.
And that precedent, it hasn't gone away, has it? I mean, even leading up to these Macau games, we saw how careful American stars have to be.
Oh, absolutely. You just have to look at that incident with LeBron James recently. The state paper, People's Daily, they published this article, looked like his commentary, but his team had to quickly clarify, no, that was just a mashup of old comments from previous trips.
Right.
The point isn't just the little controversy itself. It's the intense scrutiny that's still there. Every word, every appearance by a big U.S. star. It's seen through this political filter. Needs careful, immediate PR handling. So no, it's definitely not a fully relaxed, back to normal environment yet.
That ongoing tension, it really brings us back to how this whole thing is being framed. The headlines keep shouting about the 6-year exile ending, this sudden reversal. It just feels, like political theater, doesn't it? Time for an announcement.
It is theater. And that exile framing, it's convenient because it kind of masks what was actually a long, gradual, stepped thaw. That narrative, it simplifies the real strategy by just ignoring the most critical turning point.
Sure.
The quiet return of the broadcast, this is crucial. Chinese state TV, CCTV, they actually started showing NBA games again way back in late 2022.
2022, so years before these Macau games.
Exactly. And that wasn't just some minor detail. Getting back on state TV, that was the absolute prerequisite. You simply can't stage live games with teams, staff, sponsors flying in if you haven't already rebuilt the viewing habit, the cultural acceptance through the state-controlled media channels.
Okay. So flipping the switch back on the TV broadcasts, that was the real start of the normalization, which then sort of paved the way for the next steps.
Precisely. This return to live games now, it's the final piece of a gradual process. It started with the low-risk restart of broadcasts. Then you had controlled star tours, some grassroots youth clinics happening quietly.
Right, building blocks.
And now you get these high-profile, full-team exhibition games. The whole sequence is designed very carefully to minimize the risk. For everyone involved, the league, the sponsors, the Chinese platforms themselves.
And that risk reduction thinking, it extends right to the location, doesn't it? Why Macau for this first big live return? Why not jump straight back into, say, Beijing or Shanghai, despite the bigger operational and maybe political risks?
Macau is your classic low-friction choice. It demonstrates what we call bridge logic. It's a special administrative region, so it offers a more international staging ground. It's got sophisticated event infrastructure, thanks in large part to partners like Sands China and plenty of hotel capacity.
So using Macau as a bridge, it's smart risk management, a test run, basically.
It's a controlled, sort of neutral staging ground, yeah. If these Macau games go off without a hitch, smoothly, then they set the precedent. They build the confidence needed for bigger steps later on, maybe mainland-friendly games, maybe expanding those academy programs.
Makes sense.
They're testing the waters where the political, the logistical variables, they're just easier to manage before they commit to the massive costs and the potential volatility of a full mainland return.
The commercial stakes here, for getting this phased return right, they're just astronomical. You see estimates like 450 million people following basketball in China, 90% of Chinese basketball fans watching the NBA. It's huge. But there's still this narrative that hangs around that the league can't really break through again unless they find the next Yao Ming. Is that actually true? Does a market this huge really pivot on just one domestic star?
Well, look, Yao Ming's impact back in the 2000s was undeniable, huge, foundational even. But banking the league's current success or future growth on finding another once-in-a-generation talent like him, that's just risky. And honestly, it ignores how much the market itself has changed and matured since then.
So the idea that one star unlocks everything is too simple now.
Far too simple for the current business reality. I mean, look, we are already seeing a direct impact from a new Chinese player, Young Hansen. He was the Trailblazers' first-round pick.
Right, I saw that.
And his arrival immediately caused Trailblazers' merchandise sales in China to jump like tenfold year over year.
Tenfold? That's huge.
It is huge. It proves the star player effect is still potent, absolutely. But that's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle now. The league isn't just hoping for a single star anymore. It's focused on building these commercial flywheel.
Flywheels?
Yeah.
You mean those mutually reinforcing commercial things?
Exactly that. Forget the single hero story. What's really driving sustainable growth now is this portfolio of growth levers. You get more kids playing basketball through youth programs. That drives demand for streaming on Tencent, which fuels the market for localized gear, which, crucially, attracts big brand partnerships. It's this self-feeding loop that doesn't just depend on one guy staying famous or healthy.
And maybe the most interesting part of that flywheel is the rise of these local partnerships, especially in sportswear.
That's the clearest sign of the deep, structural two-way connections now. You look at Chinese companies like Anta, they signed Kyrie Irving. Others are doing similar deals, investing heavily in global NBA stars. This isn't just the NBA exporting talent anymore. It's Chinese companies using NBA stars to boost their own global brands.
And it's working, isn't it? Anta is now like the third biggest sportswear company in the world by sales, closing in on Nike and Adidas.
That transformation is proof. The market growth is being driven by these structural, localized partnerships, these global talent deals that really benefit both sides. The NBA provides the global platform, sure, but the Chinese partners bring the scale, the local know-how.
This structural dependence, though, it loops us right back to the leverage question. You often hear that classic takeaway from this whole saga. The NBA's return proves businesses are welcome in China if they play by China's rules, which kind of implies China holds all the cards.
Yeah, and if you connect that to the bigger picture, it really begs the question, is the leverage truly all on one side? I mean, yes, China has incredible audience scale, massive retail power, no doubt, but the NBA, it offers premium, globally popular content, top-tier live sports entertainment. That's something domestic platforms and brands inside China really need to drive their own engagement. It's unique.
So the careful staging, the subtle messaging back and forth, it suggests the incentive is actually mutual.
Fundamentally, I think so. Look, both sides gain much more from predictable, quiet cooperation than they do from public fights. China needs global brands and content for its massive consumer base, and the NBA needs the scale of the Chinese market. It's really become a symbiotic relationship. That makes walking the political tightrope just a necessary cost of doing business, maybe, rather than some kind of unilateral surrender.
Okay, so if we as observers want to look past the official statements, the political spin around these Macau games, what are the real practical signals you should watch? The things that tell us if this return is truly successful and stable.
Right. Forget the official press releases about diplomatic wins or normalized relations. You got to look at the numbers, the concrete stuff.
What are the key metrics then, the ones that really show sustained commercial health?
Okay, number one, viewership and engagement. Simple as that. How do the CCTV and Tencent streaming numbers actually perform during these Macau games and in the months after? Compare them to recent baselines. That's your cleanest read on whether mainstream interest, mainstream acceptance has genuinely bounced back after that long broadcast pause.
Makes sense, and beyond just eyeballs.
Number 2, the sponsor mix. You need to watch which brands step up. Are domestic Chinese companies, think fintech, e-commerce, those big sportswear players we mentioned, are they signing up for the stickier, longer-term assets? Things like front-of-jersey deals, naming rights for events, maybe even arena partnerships linked to the league's activities there. Short-term hype is one thing. Long-term cash commitment from local giants tells you about real stability.
Okay, viewership sponsors. What's the third signal? Moving beyond just the spectacle.
The third practical signal is grassroots and clinics. Look for any significant announced increase in long-term youth programs, coaching exchanges, that sort of thing. That signals real structural alignment, renewed trust. It shows the league isn't just being treated as a market to sell to, but is actually being allowed to invest again in long-term market development, youth engagement on the ground.
That's a fantastic framework. So the ultimate takeaway here isn't really about diplomacy, is it? It's about operational discipline. The NBA's return, it's less a political U-turn, much more a very carefully managed, staged market restart. And the key lesson for you learning about global business is that success in these tricky environments now means planning for predictability. They couldn't just leap back in. They had to, well, crawl first. Stage the growth in deliberate, low-risk steps, really embed those local partnerships, and just minimize operational risk constantly.
Yeah, the whole situation really suggests the playbook for global business might be shifting from maybe risk it all for the big prize to something more like stage and manage growth meticulously over time. And the success or failure of this very phased approach, broadcasts first, then Macau, then maybe mainland later, it could really set the standard for how other Western companies try to re-enter sensitive but essential global markets. Definitely something to think about as these games kick off.
Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.